I go to like 3 or 4 different sites.
Yes, we know.
And I'm always trying to find interesting, funny stories to get into, and sometimes we get into relationship garbage and all that stuff like that. But I like to find these quick in and outs, and that in and outs. And the cornhole one is certainly something we'll get into in a minute because it was great. The fact that we'll get into it. So a Texas woman gets up in front of city council,
and the accent just makes it so much better.
And evidently it was an open forum where anyone could have got up and talked. And she gets up there and she starts reading an excerpt from a book called Out of the Darkness, which is a book that she found at her kid's middle school.
Yes.
And she reads the excerpt, and it's like a penthouse forum letter.
Yeah, but if you don't know the terminology, what she read, you don't exactly know what they're talking about.
Yeah, and I would run it on our station, but we'd have clients and just pull up Texas Mother gets in front of City Council about Out of the Darkness, and you'll be able to read it, and you can watch it yourself.
That's true.
She drops the T word because it's in writing, and she reads it verbatim, and it's like, geez. And I mean, everyone in the room's like, and the City Council's sitting behind her. You know, it's a big, beautiful room, and she's reading this, and she's talking about cornhole, and she goes, I got a cornhole set at home, but this ain't the cornhole we're talking about. And then she starts going through the definition of what the Urban Dictionary, what cornhole is, and I'm going, and then and then someone says, okay, Mrs. So-and-so, we've had enough.
Well, her point in what she was saying was, and this is what you're teaching.
Yeah, in our schools.
In our schools.
She's like, stop talking about, what was her exact word?
Well, she said, stop teaching public health,
and teach our kids education.
Right, which that's where I was like, I'm with you. This is great. Like,
there wasn't a teacher at the school specifically teaching kids about that line, but it was in a book that was available in the library at their school. Books.
You don't want to burn books.
Listen,
Fahrenheit 451.
We just took 6 Dr. Seuss books out of our schools. And now we have.
Fine. Now I can,
So how in the hell did a book called Out of the Darkness, talking about cornholing, and get in a middle school?
You know what happens? They're like, oops.
And I can tell you right now, that's probably the most checked out book the next day. I will check that book out.
Oops.
So that was kind of her point. So it was an indirect line of defense. She's like, stop talking about public health in our schools and teach our kids.
Right, because it wasn't being taught, and that's the.
They cut her mic off, and she just kept screaming. It was great. It was great. I don't know if I'd want her as my mother.
No.
But it was.
If that's your mom.
And I'm trying to think how in the world she found this book.
Well, that's the whole. I mean, your kid brought it home from like the library.
Yeah.
Because that was my sense that this was not a part of. This wasn't like required reading.
Don't they go through, like when I worked in radio?
There's book adoption, just like.
Okay. When I was in high school, I was the music director, and every album that came in, and there'd be like 50 albums a day. It was impossible to do. I was supposed to go through every title and mark out songs you could not play on the radio station because we had an open thing where you could play whatever you wanted.
Yeah.
And I'd have to listen to it. There was no lyric sheets.
Yeah.
Back in our day in radio. It's crazy, right? Because, man, when you get an album that had lyrics on one side of the sleeve, it was like, killer. I can sing along with the songs because we couldn't understand what the hell these rock and rollers are singing. I didn't know a word that Robert Plant said for 15 years.
I was just going to say, that was part of the...
And there was nowhere where you could look up lyrics to Over the Hills and Far Away. It wasn't available. You couldn't find it.
That's why we sing songs. This is why people our age have for decades sung songs wrong.
Yeah. Arizona was cherry soda. There's a bathroom on the right. I mean, good luck trying to find Louie, the Kingsman Louie, or Long Cool Woman with a Black Dress. You could not find the lyrics to that.
She ran.
There were songs that wouldn't be played on radio because they didn't know what the hell they were saying. They're like, that's got to be pornographic. We can't play that. Louie didn't get played on the radio because they didn't know what the hell they were singing. I was like,
well, how'd they know they just played? What's that title song for Man?
Do-Wah Diddy?
No.
Blinded by the Light?
Yeah.
Revved up like a douche. Another roller in the night?
Right. But it's not douche.
No, it's revved up like a deuce, as like a car, a deuce.
Deuce.
Yeah, not revved up like a douche.
Yeah, but for our entire childhood, it was a douche. And then we went he.
So the fact that she found this book and somewhere began, you would
but
think
I'm assuming she found it in the library, right? And like that it wasn't, my sense was this was not this is not sex ed class and this is a required reading. Or is that what you thought it was?
No, I think it was just a book that made it slip through.
In the library.
Yeah.
Not in, yeah. Well, that's not teaching. Yeah. There's a lot of books. I mean, listen. This is the classic, where do you draw the line?
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's extreme, but if you're about freedom of speech, where do you draw the line? And I don't know what the standards are. I mean, there's books. That's pretty bad, though. That's pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean,
not bad.
Do you think if you went to Oak Mountain Elementary right now, there'd be a book in there that shouldn't be in there?
Oh, well, by whose definition shouldn't be in there? There are books in
there.
there.
By most parents in there. There's got to be some books in there that.
Well, there's already books in there, I'm sure, that are not.
I'm pulling up Out of the Darkness just because I want to find out what this book's all about. Out of the Darkness. There's probably a lot of people that would probably get that book right now just because.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that I would want my middle schooler to read a book. Well, I mean, look, let me just say.
Well, it's an audio book.
Let me just say, this gets, should we not have books about homosexuality in the library? I'll bet you there is a whole debate about that.
I'm sure there is.
No, because where the debate is, so that's not a debate. The debate is what you're teaching, because they're teaching this in sex ed.
Well,
and it's a huge issue.
But see, the library.
The library's different
now,
than
well, there's a difference between a school library and a public library.
Oh, well, are you upset about in the public library? No, everything should be in the public library. You should have Hustler, Penthouse. There should be nothing. It is a public library. It should all be there.
I agree with you.
From Malcolm X stuff to Hitler stuff to hate crimes, it should all be there because that's a public library and it is a place of knowledge. Right? It is.
I agree with you.
Now, school, because school has to be age appropriate.
And I know because I used to go to our public library.
Oh, dude, what did you
do? When I was 14, 15, and Sears Magazine wasn't doing it for me, or the National Geographic, I would go looking at
anatomy books.
Well, you can do it.
Oh.
Hey, we used to go to Spencer's. Go look at posters.
Yeah.
Go into anatomy or erotica or something at a BAM and see who's standing in those aisleways.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But listen, I think the school issue is obviously more an issue because there's an age, right? There's an age, there is an age factor there that you wouldn't have in any other. And I guarantee you that what happened was somebody missed that one.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I think someone did. And it would have been nice. I mean, maybe she actually went to somebody and said, listen, there's a book there, and nothing was done about it. The fact that she called them out without, I'm assuming she called them out without, because someone probably said, pull the book right away.
Yeah. I mean, look, you don't have, listen.
And it's in Texas.
In middle, I know.
Where things are bigger than better.
Well, they got a whole lot of issues going on. I mean, look, I think it's probably fair to say, I could say this as a psychologist. I can say this professionally. A middle school, so what is that? 11 to 13?
Yeah, something like that.
11 to 13-year-old does not need to be exposed at middle school to books books containing content about anal sex.
No.
I know as I'm saying that, I'm thinking, okay, do they need to be exposed to, there's all the books, Dear God, It's Margaret. There's a lot of books that are about sex and coming of age and all of that. They're fictional books in the library.
I don't even know what they teach in school anymore when it comes to sexuality. Because when we went to school,
boys are here, girls are there.
And it was real basic.
Yeah.
It was super basic. Here's the anatomy. Here's how it works. This goes in this. This is how we have children. And it was
well,
dumb.
and then depending on no. But then don't you remember they separated you?
Yeah.
The girls. This is what we talked about. This the whole bleeding thing. So if your parents are too freaked out to tell you, we're going to tell you about the bleeding.
Yeah.
And you had to sign. I grew up in a family of boys, but I remember you had to sign a waiver.
Mm-hmm.
Parents had to sign a waiver that said, I'm allowing my child to have this education, or I choose not to. Mm-hmm. You could sign out of it. Yep. And I think now I'm trying to think.
And you trusted your school to teach them the right things,
the basic things,
the right teacher, the right
Well, and that's where now and then when we went, there was not a discussion of homosexuality.
Yeah.
Either way.
Is there now?
Yeah, and it's very controversial depending on how it's being taught. Because it in some cases and there's been protests because it's been taught as a deviant sexual.
Certainly down here in the South, yes.
Yes. I mean, we live in our own
I think it's okay to recognize it as a sexual preference, but I don't think we need to get into what that sexual preference is and the anatomy of it.
Well, look, if we're talking about that, dude, we've been talking about it all week. I don't know how to say this. We've been talking all week about various forms of sexual intimacy, right? So you're not going to talk about homosexuality. Homosexuality is your sexual identity or sexual preference. So you can talk about that. Do you want to talk about how individuals who are homosexual have intimacy? You say, okay, I'm going to leave that off the table. All right. So if you're talking about how heterosexual people have intimacy, you know where I'm going with this. There's one way.
Yeah.
But there's lots of ways that they have sexual intimacy.
Yeah.
We talked about.
Oh no! Again, this is a parent thing for me. You know, you lay the groundwork down.
Well, and what's the groundwork? And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And listen, that is the discussion.
Yeah.
That really is the discussion. I mean, you could talk about, without the sexual part, you could talk about what happens to your body and what happens to your body. And if you were going to leave it at that, okay, this is going to happen to you, and this is going to happen to you, and
in most cases, like even this is one thing that has not changed. We learn from our friends, not from our teachers, when it comes to that.
And listen, it gets even now.
Most of us learned about sex when we were 10 or 11 years old.
And we didn't have any access to it.
No.
Yeah, except for you who went to the library.
Well, we had something at our church about it.
Really? Was it like the Catholic?
There was a Catholic thing, and I went with my dad.
Do you remember the book Joy of Sex that some parents had?
Yeah. Was that Ruth? No, who was that?
I don't know. Kinsey. I don't think so. But you remember it was Joy of Sex was they were illustrations.
Yeah. My dad took me to the Catholic church. We were in the gym. It was all boys, and we had a priest up there and then a sex education guy.
What the priest?
Because it was
celibate.
But it was Catholic church. I mean, there's got to be a priest and everything.
Okay. So what was
not all priests are celibate. When they're celibate wants to become priest.
Yeah.
But some priests are married. Because you can come from one religion and then join the priesthood of a Catholic church and remain married. Oh, yeah.
Wait, can I just ask? So
you can be an Episcopalian and then all of a sudden change your denomination to Catholic and stay married. And there's deacons
hang on.
who are married.
Okay, hang on.
Yeah.
If you become a priest from another religion and you're already married.
Yeah, you can remain married.
No, I know that. But is there an expectation of celibacy?
No.
Okay.
No, because it's healthy. If you're married, you should. It's part of.
But if you become a priest, then you don't get married because you're married to God.
Exactly. And if you want to get married, then you can't become a priest anymore.
Unless you.
No, you probably could. You could probably.
There's some pretzels there, dude.
Oh yeah, there's not many.
So you go, okay.
There's not many of them.
I'm no longer a priest.
Yep.
I'm going to go become an Episcopalian.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get me a nice lady. Mm-hmm. Then I'm coming back. Is that how it is?
I'm thinking about becoming a priest myself. I almost became a priest when I was 18.
Thank God you didn't.
Man, we were talking about choices. Could you imagine? Issues we talking about? I'd be a great youth pastor.
You would. But the whole celibacy thing?
I could do it. I've been doing it for 7 years.
Could you do senior frogs? Well, no, we got into that whole issue, right?
No.
When we did
I had a good friend.
What are priests not allowed to do? Like, can priests forget the sex part? But I guess that's immoral. Like, could you have a priest? Could Father Vu be at like senior frogs? I mean, he could be. He could be there.
He could be there. He used to come out to my bar gigs.
Okay.
Bud girls.
Did he bless him?
Oh yeah.
Can you bless?
Dude, he was amazing
Jello
because
shots?
he would show up. He wasn't a drinker. He didn't drink, but he would show up.
Can priests drink?
Sure, they can.
Okay.
Yeah. And he would show up, and then he's like, he'd call me. He's like, you got a gig tonight for Bud Light game night or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
One of our sponsors, Budweiser, Anheuser-Busch. And he would say, do you want me to wear my collar? And I'm like, you can do whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes he wore his collar, sometimes he didn't. And when he wore a collar, it kind of freaked people out. But he was one of the few priests, and I love this about him, that would actually go out to the people.
Right.
He wouldn't wait for the people to come to him, because people at Gabriel's or Senior Frog or whatever ain't going to go see Father Vu. But he would go out and see the people. He would wash the feet, man. I love that about him. And by the time we left, he'd be sitting at a table with 16 of my buddies doing diagrams of Jewish things and Catholicism, and they'd be amazed by it.
Were they drunk, though?
Some of them were, some of them weren't. And I'd be sitting there going, okay, well, it was great. Yeah, that's really interesting. Again, I mean, I think that's a parent thing. You know, your kids, by the time your kids are learning about sexual health in school, they should already know about sexual health in school.
Well, and I think
if you're a parent and you're waiting for the school to teach your kid about sexual health, and then you're going to even out the edges and sandpaper the corners, you're already way behind the curve. You got to teach your kids. That goes for drugs. That goes for sex.
But
that
you know
goes
what a lot of parents don't want to do? They don't want to start at age 10.
No, and they feel like if the school's starting now is about the time I need to start talking to my kid about it. You need to
start. There's nothing wrong. Here's the other thing. This is such the weirdest thing to me.
Yeah.
It really is. I was going to say it as a psychologist, but I didn't understand this even before. I think it's got nothing to do with me being a psychologist. Mm-hmm. This whole thing that if we say something to our kids, then they'll become that or they'll do that.
Yeah.
Right? If we talk about drugs to our kids, then they're going to go do drugs.
Yep.
If we talk about homosexuality, they're going to be gay. If we talk about sex, they're going to go have. I don't get that. That's not how humans work.
Yep.
But that's the problem. I think I see a lot of parents. I mean, yes, it's uncomfortable, but I see a lot of parents. I don't want to talk about that to them because they're not ready for that. Well, if they're not ready for that, then they won't understand it, or they won't engage in it. I mean, hell, look at your daughter. Your daughter's asking questions that like 17-year-olds aren't even asking.
Yeah.
As a parent, you can't screw up your kid as easy as you think you can in a one-shot deal. You screw up your kids when it's consistent. If you're doing consistent stupid things, you'll screw up your kid. But let's put aside any sort of abuse. But if you say something that you shouldn't say once, it's not going to mess up your kids. You take your 10-year-old or 9-year-old and you say, you know what? I'm going to talk to you about homosexuality, anal sex, S&M. I'm going to tell you about all that stuff at age 10.
No.
I'm saying, let's say you did.
Yeah. Stupid, but yeah.
Well, but you know what? There's little to no effect. I mean, that's the point, is like you don't have to worry as a parent.
My 9 and 14-year-old were at a wedding this weekend, and all they could think about was the bride and groom kissing. That's all they talked about.
Right.
They're like, I don't want to see that. And my 14-year-old said, just look away. And he was serious, like, I do not want to see.
Right.
He goes, that's weird.
Yeah.
That's weird to me. And I said, well, your mother and I used to do it. And he goes, yeah, but you're my mom and dad, but I don't want to see two other people kiss. I do not want to. So he looked away. And then my daughter was like, I said, how was the kiss? Did you see the kiss? And she sent the emoji with
vomit.
The vomit.
See, but that's
I was like, yes, she's still innocent. She's still cleansed, my friend. She's 9 years old.
But don't assume you can test. You can test.
It was great.